Hey guys, hope everybody's doing well during this crazy time of coronavirus and sickness. Hope everybody's staying safe and healthy. Hope you all have good luck with how this thing's going. And on the topic of luck, our discussion today is on Moral Luck by Thomas Nagel. Now, to start off with, I'd like to address what is moral luck, because it's kind of similar but somewhat different than how we normally view luck. So moral luck occurs when a person is morally judged despite being at the mercy of external factors that are beyond his or her control. And like with all kinds of luck, this can be good or bad, depending on the situation, depending on how things turned out in the end. You could be better off for the luck, or you could be worse off. An example of where someone is worse off is the reckless driver example that Thomas Nagel presents to us. In his example, he describes a man who is a reckless driver driving along a road and runs a red light. And right after he runs the red light, a pedestrian steps out in front of him and is hit and killed by the car. And it's important because the pedestrian stepping out in front of a car was an external factor beyond the driver's control. They had no say in the person stepping out in front of them. But because that person walked out in front of them, the driver would be charged or would be tried for either vehicular manslaughter or involuntary manslaughter, as opposed to just being held responsible as a reckless driver. And this is a big distinction, both morally and legally, with the implications. If you're a reckless driver, you might be chastised by the law and given a, say, $200 or $400 ticket. Whereas for vehicular or involuntary manslaughter, you're looking at many, many years in jail. And this would be, like I said, a case of bad moral luck. Yeah. Now, Nagel goes on to state that the idea of moral luck threatens to undermine the entire basis for moral assessment. Because if the condition of control is consistently applied, if you take every aspect and look at, okay, was this under this person's direct control or was it due to something else, it threatens to erode the whole basis. And to kind of explain that, we'll go into the types of moral luck that he discusses. The first of these is known as constitutive luck. And this states that what kind of person you are, your capacities, your temperament, your inclinations are all down to the luck you have growing up. So for example, if you think about a poor person growing up in, say, Saudi Arabia, that person would have a very different constitution from a middle-class person growing up in America. Their capacities would be different. Their temperament would be different. They would look at different situations differently, have a completely different paradigm. And this is dependent on luck. So what kind of person you are, in the end, kind of depends on the luck you have growing up and the external situations around you. Another type of luck that Nagel discusses is circumstantial luck. And this says that the problems and situations you encounter and find yourself in depend on luck. And as one of the examples he points out in the excerpt is a man who would have otherwise lived a normal and peaceful life in, say, Austria, may find himself as an officer in control of a concentration camp in Germany if he decided to move there prior to World War II breaking out. And another example would be if, say, you walk to work in New York, and on your way to work you get robbed. If you had left the house, say, 15 minutes earlier, or if you had decided to take a cab to work that day, you could have avoided that, but the circumstances weren't in your favor, and the luck of the draw was that you'd found yourself in a situation that was not good at all. Now, the third and fourth type of luck that he brings up, I found can kind of be brought under one simple umbrella category known as causational luck. And the first of these states that the role luck plays, or the first of these is the role luck plays and the effect of an action being determined by the antecedent circumstances. And I'll break that down a little bit and give you an example to kind of make it a little bit easier to understand. So say that you're standing outside of a burning building and you're the only one around, and you hear someone on the 5th floor crying out for help. Now, if the fire had started on, say, the 10th floor and was working its way down, you would have a lot better chance of getting in there and getting the person out safely. But if the fire had started on the ground level, then, well, that'd be a completely different circumstance. You'd have to fight your way through the fire up and through the fire back down, and luck would not be on your side. So that's an example of the antecedent circumstances being altered for luck. And like I said, luck can be good or bad. It would be good if it started on the 10th floor, make it a lot easier, and it'd be bad luck if it started on the bottom floor. And the second type of causational luck is the role luck directly plays in how an action or project turns out. And as an example of this, I'd like to kind of go with a business example. Say that you have recently started a new company, and everything's going great. You're making all the right decisions, working hard, you're slowly growing, but there's a problem with where your inventory is stored, and say a fire breaks out, and then all of a sudden all of your products that you had stored to sell all burned up. And this could be a major setback in your business. Or as another example, say you're a small business owner and a new virus breaks out. And you've made all the right decisions, but now since everybody is confined to their homes and on shelter in place, your business goes under. And so luck plays a huge role in how things turn out and who you are and what circumstances you find yourself in. And knowing and seeing this, you start to see how once you start to apply that condition of control, all things start to whittle away. If it's like Nagel said, if it's applied consistently, then it threatens to undermine our whole basis, because in the end, there's very little that is down to our direct control. Another topic he brings about that runs kind of parallel to this idea of luck is religion and our beliefs. If you were raised in India, you might find yourself as a Hindu or a Buddhist, and but if you were raised in America, you might find yourself a Christian. So sometimes, even though we believe that these things are inherent to us, it's down to the luck of the draw a lot of the time what our beliefs are and what we believe and what we think really defines who we are. It's sometimes not up to us. It's not under our control. And in light of seeing the extent that luck plays in our lives, both with what kind of person we are and how things turn out, do you guys believe that almost nothing is under our control, or do you think that we're still very much responsible for our lives and our personas, despite those external factors? What do you guys think? Do you think it's more down to the luck of the draw, or is it still up to us with what we do? It's a big question, and it's one of the big problems with this idea of applying the condition of control in different aspects of our lives. Now, one of the big problems with moral luck is that it brings up the idea that we should really only be held responsible for a fraction of what ends up happening, and this runs contrary to our natural inclinations and how our legal system works. If we were only held responsible for a fraction of what happened, then there would be no real risk. We would have lots of problems with how do we hold someone accountable for this when they were raised in a family where they were beaten? Do we really hold them accountable for not knowing the basic basis of morality and of being good to people when all they've known was torture? And for an example of how the moral luck idea runs contrary to the legal system, Just imagine that, I know none of y'all would ever do this, but imagine you walk into a gas station with a gun and attempt to rob the attendant. And then the attendant, to your surprise, pulls out a gun of their own, and you're forced to shoot them in order to live. Even though you didn't walk in there with the intent of murdering someone, you did, and because of that, you will be tried for both armed robbery and first-degree murder. This is known as the felony murder rule in law, where if you engage in an inherently dangerous if you engage in an inherently dangerous action, you're then held responsible for all consequences of that action, regardless of your intent going in. And this makes sense. It really does make sense, because if you decide to go and rob a bank and in the process someone dies, then you should be held responsible, because it was your action that caused that person to die, even though it may not have been something completely under your control. However, moral luck, like I said, disagrees with this. It says that because it was not under your control, all that should be judged is the intent. It runs contrary to the consequentialist way of thinking, and more supports the Kantian view, that what is important is the intent and the will behind the action. And just for an example of good moral luck, say you have a wealthy individual who decides to give money to charity in order to get the tax deductions. And although they did that for the purpose of benefiting themselves, if that money then went on to do some truly great things, we might regard them as a hero. However, like I said, with the Kantian way of thinking and with the knowledge of moral luck, it wasn't really up to them that it turned out to be such a great thing. Therefore, they should just be held as someone who was trying to get a tax break. And another important distinction and problem that people have with moral luck is that they don't consider that there has to be at least some degree of negligence or fault for a situation to be considered one of bad moral luck. And on the other hand, there has to be some degree of a goodwill or a good intent for something to be considered good moral luck. An example Nagel brings up, he goes back to the reckless driver. And say that it was a normal person driving normally, who had kept up all the maintenance on their car and was following all the road rules, and then someone stepped out in front of them and got hit. Well, the driver may blame himself, may feel awful, but it wouldn't be a case of bad moral luck. It would just be something that happened. For it to be considered bad moral luck, there would have to be some degree of negligence. Say if the driver failed to get his brakes changed, if he went in for a brake check and at a local Take 5 oil change, and they checked the brakes and they said, "Hey, look, these really weared down. You need to replace these." But he said, "No, it'll be fine." And then someone stepped out in front of him and he wasn't able to stop in time. That would be a case of bad moral luck, because he didn't know whenever he was in there at the Take 5 that this would happen if he didn't get his brake changed, but it did. And because something that wasn't completely under his control happened, that would be bad moral luck. Now, I mentioned this earlier, but one proposed solution is that there can be no moral risk when you do an action. That you should do an action with the knowledge that whatever happens, your intent is the most important thing. And this runs, like I said, runs contrary to our natural inclinations, because there's a big distinction between going and saving someone from a burning building and then while you're in there accidentally catching fire and dropping them out the window. There's a big moral difference between those, even though it wasn't completely up to your control. So what do you guys think? Do you think that this moral risk is that we should consider a system where there's not as much moral risk brought into the equation, where we where we judge people more based on their intent of their actions and what they went in there knowing and went in there trying to do? Or do you think we should retain the current system and just say, it really was up to them? If something bad happened, that's on them. What do you guys think? And that's it. I hope you guys are staying well and staying healthy. I look forward to seeing your responses.